For any parent, trying to navigate the education system can be challenging and overwhelming at times, especially if you have a child with 22q. But we are fortunate to have Donna Cutler-Landsman in our corner. Donna has over 35 years of classroom experience and has worked with children with and without learning challenges. She is the author of an excellent book called Educating Children with Velo-Cardio-Facial Syndrome, 22q11.2 Deletion Syndrome, and DiGeorge Syndrome, now in its third edition. This book and her knowledge has helped thousands of families and educators navigate this unfamiliar world. I'm honored to introduce you to Donna. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 22q podcast. My name is Becky White, and I am honored to have Donna Cutler-Landsman. And she is this wonderful person I was able to meet through the 22q Family Foundation. And she wrote an incredible book all about how to help and focus around the education of students with 22q. And it helped our family immensely when we started this journey through education. So Donna, welcome. And thank you so much for being on today.
Well, thanks so much for having me.
I can only think of like the hundreds of families and students and teachers that you've helped over the years. And it's just amazing. And I truly just want to say thank you from our family, because your book, I hand it to every teacher at the beginning of the school year. And I say, here's a great resource. Take a few minutes. I've highlighted everything. I have it all. I have your old edition too, all bookmarked and ready to go. But it is such a great resource. So thank you so much. And I wanted to just let you introduce yourself, tell people who you are, and a little bit about your book.
Sure. Well, I am Donna Cutler-Landsman. I am a former educator. I was a teacher for many, many years. I also have a master's degree in counseling psychology and a child who is now an adult with this syndrome. And I have, a long journey dealing with both the syndrome that I didn't really understand as a young parent. At the time my child was diagnosed back in 1994, not much was known about 22q. So I kind of stumbled through the journey and started getting connected with the professionals that were running conferences around the world. And through them and really their friendship and their guidance, which I can't thank them enough. Wonderful, wonderful professionals, kind of helped me understand the syndrome. And over the years, this kind of morphed into my own personal journey with it, and then trying to give back to the community. And, early on with that, I brought some of my knowledge as a teacher to conferences, both domestically and internationally, and started speaking at these conferences and talking about things that worked with me and my son and my experience in education. And this kind of led me to today, where I am consulting with families, worldwide, really, on educating children with the syndrome. So it's been a long journey, but I'm very, very happy to be here today to kind of share the nuances of it with you and your audience.
Thank you. We're happy to have you too. And, what are some of the most common learning challenges that a child with 22q will face?
Well, it varies from child to child, but there is a lot of consistency. Really, the biggest struggle is really in the area of executive functioning and planning and organization and being able to execute on tasks. Beyond that, there is really a profound difficulty in mathematics that seems to permeate the syndrome from child to child. I meant most of the kids that I see moving on to adult life need some level of support with money management. Other areas are reading comprehension, some social cognition issues sometimes. And then most kids with this have anxiety. So learning new tasks and managing in a school setting sometimes can be a bit overwhelming. So we always need to do some programming around that. But that in a nutshell is kind of the main challenges. There are other nuances from child to child, but that's pretty consistent across kids.
And what is the number one education question that you get asked the most?
Well, I think the staff around the country really are struggling to figure out how to best help the kids. Because they do come in with a lot of medical challenges and all of these different learning challenges. And, the question is, how do I help this child? And, my answer really depends on the age level, because this syndrome changes from an educational perspective over time. So early on, the needs center around therapies, speech and language, OT, sometimes PT, but as children learn to speak better because of they have palate abnormalities and velopharyngeal insufficiency that causes speech issues. Once that is dealt with surgically and through therapy, sometimes early elementary, the kids can manage pretty well in school because decoding for reading is a strength. But as they move through school at about third grade level, when tasks become more complex and executive functioning skills are more important, and there are higher level thinking skills that are asked of the children when they answer questions at school, things become more difficult. And, maybe the questions are, how do I help my child at this particular level, or what's wrong, or why is my child struggling so much in school as they are in middle and high school? And that's because of the nature of 22q. And there is a kind of a change in needs over time, where children with this tend to have a lot more trouble as they mature, mastering the typical school content. So I think sometimes families have a little bit harder time figuring out how to manage with the kids when they enter upper elementary or middle school, because, oftentimes there's a lot of challenges there that they're just not understanding.
Yeah, I like how you mentioned each stage is different. There's not one question, because the questions change with the student.
Exactly.
Going through the stages of 22 in a child's education, what should parents be prepared for? So if you wouldn't mind just starting at like the baby preschool, starting IEP and testing, what should a parent who has a new child that is about to enter the school system, what should they be preparing for?
Yeah, well, I definitely would contact the school system from the get-go, because we have a lot of data and research that many children, the vast majority of children with this syndrome, need some type of special programming. So, there's programs birth to 3. There are programs, preschool programs. So I would get them in as soon as possible, speaking to the school staff to see if they can be tested and see where their developmental stage is. And if they're behind in an area, they can be worked with in the home, and there's programs from the get-go. So, certainly we center around at that age level, speech and language, which is oftentimes delayed with this syndrome, and occupational therapy. A lot of children with this have what's called hypotonia, or low muscle tone. So there's exercises and resources available to help them build muscles and move easier, holding a pencil, cutting and coloring and doing all those things. And I think in addition to that is just managing in a classroom. So sometimes those little ones need some experience separating from mom and dad and being in school, and just understanding a classroom routine, being able to sit still and not fidget too much and listen to a story. So, all of those kind of school readiness things. Sometimes kids with 22q need a little extra TLC with getting them ready to even be successful in that type of environment. So that would be the beginning of it. And then, excuse me, as we move through, in kindergarten, first and second grade, it's reading skills. Decoding is usually a strength, and rote memory is a strength. So little ones in elementary school can typically learn to read, but where they fall down is really comprehending what they're reading. So it's the task of really working with them on predicting what's going to happen in a story and being able to retell a story with enough details. And then math is always that area of need where we're really focusing in on developing number sense and understanding what numbers stand for. So a lot of embedded support for them at the early elementary ages in understanding number and, what math is all about to the best that we can. And then, of course, making some accommodations in the classroom, like preferential seating and re-explaining. And, there are a lot of things we can embed into IEPs that will help the child be successful. There's also some hidden visual perceptual issues with the syndrome that are not always readily apparent. It's not really acuity or understanding how to read letters in a doctor's office. So it's not really that, it's how the brain processes visual information. So it's more like visual memory, visual discrimination, understanding how to close an object if it's partially covered. It's called visual closure. Those kinds of things can be impaired in this population, and it's not really something that is readily apparent. So we want to make sure that we're testing and doing the neuropsychological assessments that are necessary to really understand the child.
Right. Why are the neurological tests so important? Why would you encourage parents to get those tests done?
Well, twofold. First of all, we can understand how the child learns. And if they have strengths, we want to teach to the strength. So if they have visual, spatial, and visual perceptual deficits, we want to verbally overteach everything. We don't want to rely on demonstration and visual memory when the child has a deficiency in that area. So we want to understand how they're learning and gear the instruction to that to best optimize their chance for success in the classroom. That's one reason. The second reason is to track their achievement and change over time. So if we have a baseline at elementary, we can repeat the test in 3 years, and then in another 3 years, and another 3 years. And that allows us to both decide if their educational program is appropriate for them, if they're making progress relative to their peers. And it also helps us change our structure and how we're approaching their learning over time, because we know that the syndrome has challenges over time. So we want to make sure that we're matching what we're expecting of the child in the classroom and what they actually are dealing with from an educational perspective and the way that they learn and they can process information. So I think it's avoiding that mismatch as they get older, because as we're talking about early elementary, when they run into more trouble at middle and high school, we don't want to stress those kids out. That's one of the real risks with 22q is developing more of a mental health difficulty. And researchers have looked at too much stress and what that does to this population. And it can really kind of push those kids to more difficult mental health issues. And, some children where the expectations are high and they're not able to meet those expectations and they're not understood, start having self-hatred, self-doubt. They don't want to go to school. They withdraw. There's depression, and that can escalate into more serious problems. Right. So we really want to make sure we're understanding the syndrome longitudinally and being able to help the children feel good about themselves, like school, continue to learn, and move toward a future that is consistent with what they're capable of handling. Right. So that's, to answer, I think the testing is really important. Yeah. And, it also allows for many children with 22q to be qualified for state programming, for long-term care, for, medical help, for Social Security as they age out of school. So we need to have scores. Otherwise, they don't there's no way to qualify them for programming.
Right. And for those students that are in the older years of school, high school, and about to get out of high school, what are some recommendations you have for those family members or those individuals?
Yeah, that's a really, really critical time for those families, because decisions that they make can really, kind of set their child up for help in the adult community, or really lead to situations where the help is needed, but the family hasn't done the things that they need to do to apply for that help or get qualified for the help. So we really want to work with the high school staff to get the right tests done and to write IEPs as the child is getting ready to exit high school that clearly articulate where the needs are, that don't brush over the needs and are honest. I really work with families to be introspective and really think about what their child would need if they were 100% independent on a college campus or in the community on their own, and help those families come to terms with whether or not they're going to need community support. And many children with 22q as young adults do need a level of community involvement. Many are independent, having jobs, some are married, some drive, but there's always that underlying need for some support around executive functioning, money management. And so that it becomes difficult for families to manage that totally on their own without any support from the community. So,
yeah, it's such a wide range.
It's a wide range. It really is.
Right. Yeah. No, thank you for that advice. And if parents continue to get pushback from their school district at any age, what are some suggestions that you have for them that they could do?
Well, I would keep pursuing it. They can certainly reach out to me or to the 22q Family Foundation to get educational support. There is a program that's free of charge for families through the Educational Foundation. I also do private consulting to families that helps them go through the IEP, advocate strongly for their child, and understand what the needs are. So there is help out there. The VCF Virtual Center also does education advocacy and support. So families in the United States have resources here that can help them. And we have knowledge based on years of experience, many IEP meetings, thousands that I've attended. We have data and we have research studies that families can go back to their school district really armed with some pretty strong data that indicates that children need the support. So I would say if they're being shut down, I would reach out to the resources that are available to them and bring in advocates to the table. Because I think my experience, at least dealing with school districts, is that really the staff there it wants to help. Sometimes though, they're just in the dark about what the syndrome is. They don't really understand it. And when I come in more as a quote unquote expert to the table, it really does help the staff see from a different perspective. I can bring in all of my data from the thousands of, IEP meetings that I've attended. It gives it's a different perspective than a single parent can bring into the IEP. Because a lot of times staff will kind of dismiss the parent because they get a lot of parents in there with, needs for their children, and they don't really sometimes listen as carefully as they need to parents that come in. So, so reach out to the community. There is help out there, and we have a wide range of professionals around the country that are very willing and able to help. So,
which is great and can feel so isolating when you're in it. especially as a young parent just starting the journey. It's so intimidating and it's a lot of work, but know that there are resources like you just said, and don't lose hope.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, don't lose hope.
Right.
Thank you for that. What is one thing you want every 22Q parent to know when it comes to their child's education?
That kids really with 22Q can learn. And if it is difficult for them, that the mode of instruction needs to change, I think in my experience, children with this syndrome do better in a one-on-one or small group setting to re-explain the material, and the hands-on experiential learning is the way to go. That book learning or lecture learning doesn't really sink in like actually doing the activity. And that learning with 22Q really is a little delayed, but it continues throughout a lifetime. So, to continue working with the kids through their 20s, through their early 30s and beyond, because there's capacity here to learn and to be independent and successful in the community, and not to be discouraged, because book learning and the typical way that education is run in the country for the masses is not necessarily a way that is conducive to children with this syndrome learning. So hands-on, experiential, small group, and repetition, drill and practice, coming back. And I think really the direct instruction, that's the other piece of this, that, don't expect the child to make a lot of reasoning leaps and, trying to figure out things from a lot of different perspectives. It's almost better to say, this is how we do it, and this is why, and we're going to go step by step and teach it through drill and practice, and they'll catch on, and they can catch on to very complex learning. There are adults with this that have taken university classes and passed university classes. There's ways to go through this, I think, that are more conducive to success. But sometimes the larger group setting where there's no support is a very difficult, kind of scary, anxious environment for children with this, and they can tend to shut down because of delays in processing speed and working memory. It makes that mode of instruction pretty hard for kids with 22Q to manage within that type of modality. And it is easier for them to have it re-explained where they can answer questions. It's a smaller group. It can be slowed down. More examples can be given. Same level of difficulty, but in a very different approach. So,
right. Very different approach. I like that. Yeah. Yes. Because they are capable.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's just a different approach.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
I know that you just started with the 22Q Family Foundation, the new special education advocacy training. Could you touch upon that really quick, just to let people know about it?
Absolutely. So right now I am, quote unquote, the advocacy expert here for the United States. There's one of me. And as COVID struck and, there was a lot more need, but also sort of introspective from my perspective, I really felt like this was the right time to share my knowledge with the community. I meant there is no guarantee that any of us are going to be around forever. There's no, for 10 more years or 15 more years or whatever. I don't have any plans to retire. So not to say I'm, exiting this, but I really wanted, while I was able to be fully invested in the community, to share this knowledge with other people. So the idea is to train and to really help mentor interested people that would be interested in doing what I do, which is advocating for children in the school setting at IEP meetings. And what I've done, along with the support of the 22Q Family Foundation, is I put together training modules. And right now I'm running a class. I have about 28 interested parties here.
That's great.
through my advocacy training. They're a wonderful, fabulous group. I'm loving it. We're meeting on Wednesdays where they're watching a module, answering some questions, and we're discussing it on Wednesdays for about an hour in Zoom call. And the goal is really to branch out, possibly have advocates that are more regional, so that we would have a West Coast advocate, we'd have a Midwest, we'd have South, we'd have the East Coast. And I would kind of be an overseer. So I would be there helping everybody and, taking the harder cases, obviously, where maybe it's a little bit more difficult, but having more boots on the ground, so to speak, and having more people out there with that base of knowledge that would be able to kind of, work within regional areas. And we have some interested people. The modules are recorded, so I don't know whether we're going to repeat this again and maybe, grow this a little bit more. But I'm thrilled to have this group of honestly very talented people that responded to this. And I'm excited to think about, expanding this to more educational consultants that will be trained both in general advocacy for anybody which I do general advocacy. I've worked with families with problems that are not 22Q. So I specialize in 22Q, but I've expanded to other areas. But we're going to have this group that's trained, and then also we'll have the 22Q training, which is starting after the holidays next spring, to be specific with 22Q. But this is the idea. And then these people will work, hopefully for the Family Foundation, and be out there as spokespeople, mentors, and really can come to the table with families, via Zoom or in person, and share the 22Q and be there to support more people.
That is fantastic.
Yeah, I want to leave a legacy. I've been at this for a long time, and I can't just see if I quit, if I say tomorrow, I'm tired with this, I'm done. Where does that leave everybody? So right. This is designed to leave, a lot of footprints and a lot of people that can pick this up and move forward with it. So the idea is to grow and to have people available and willing to support others.
Mm-hmm. That's fantastic, because there's only one you.
Well, there is. And
there's only one you. And you can never retire.
I'm not really planning retiring. Honestly, I love what I do, and I love working with families, but who knows? You can't guarantee anything in the world. So this way, I'm feeling better about how this is moving forward. So this is kind of a long-term plan.
Yeah, and that's great.
We're excited. We're really excited about it.
Yeah, it is. It's a great thing you guys are doing. And you can find out more on Donna's website on this podcast's description, so people can find you. And that way you can also reach Donna through her Gmail on the website as well, and find out a little bit more about all of her services. And with a few more minutes, I did want to briefly just ask a little bit about your 22Q journey yourself, and being a 22Q mom, and just whatever you're willing to share. We'd love to hear.
Well, I have a 38-year-old son with 22Q that I am extremely proud of. He has really, overcome a lot of challenges in his life. So, we didn't know what we were dealing with when he was born. He had 3 palate surgeries, a lot of trouble with the velopharyngeal insufficiency, but today you would never know that he had all the speech therapy that he had. He got through school. He had difficulty, with learning and with, mastering the curriculum, but was an extremely hard worker. And, we worked very hard with them to try to provide the therapies and the support educationally. And, he ended up attending Madison Area Technical College, and, was married for a period of time. He's no longer married, but he has a a beautiful daughter. We have just an adorable little 8-year-old granddaughter through him that he has 50% custody, and he's very devoted as a dad. He is working in a retail and at a Walgreens and is enjoying his job. He's a very responsible worker. He does not call in sick. He's done driving jobs for years in the past, and he's very reliable, very sweet young man. He do anything for anybody. So he is a very devoted son, calls us all the time. He lives up north. We live in Florida. So he is up, kind of on his own with a little support through the community. But, he is doing really well. Yeah. So we're fortunate with that. So I would say to parents, hang in there, because the children with this, the young adults with this, the adults with this, it's a journey that is a difficult journey for them. But I just, and a lot of times I wish I could almost change society, because this is kind of a hidden disability. And over the years, I've watched with my own son struggling with people that just didn't understand him and could be mean or say things because of ignorance and misunderstanding, and really treat him in ways that, I found hurtful as a parent watching it. And I think that these podcasts, just really having people understand that there are others out there with somewhat hidden disabilities here. They may not understand by looking at somebody that looks like everybody else looks, but inside there's these learning differences and different ways that they see the world and different challenges. And there needs to be a little bit more kindness and love and respect in the community, I think, for people with challenges and with this syndrome in particular. So
yeah. Thank you for sharing all of that. And what has your son taught you?
Oh my goodness. Tenacity, patience, willingness to pick himself up and move forward. He really is an inspiration to me, because I do see him, brushing himself off and moving forward. And over time, he has, I think, realized that, that when people are not kind out there in the world, he needs to just let it roll off of him. And I think he's a lot like me in that my feelings get hurt, and it's hard for me to share, shed that. I'm always trying to please people and have people, like what I do. And he's the same way. And when someone isn't nice, it's hard for him to move past that. So he's taught me that, I need to sort of give up on some of that as well. And, we try to help each other do that. And I see him striving forward, and I really am super proud of him and the things that he's accomplished. And I'll tell you, especially, he's got an adorable dog now that is just the cutest little dog. And his daughter is the love of his life. He just loves her, and is a totally devoted dad. So that gives me a lot of joy to see how much he's trying to raise her with the right values and the right moral compass.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's wonderful. I'm so glad he's doing well, and we wish him nothing but the best. And he's an amazing mom. So I guess my last question for you today is, when he got his 22q diagnosis, and you're in that moment and it's completely new to you, if you could go back in time to that moment and tell yourself something, what would it be?
I think that it's going to be okay. That I think that when you hear about something like this, of course, it's not, as a parent, you don't want anything different to be about your child. But, that it is going to be what it is. And, I've had this conversation a lot with different people, that you have to almost live in the moment and not worry about what might happen down the road, because you can drive yourself crazy with that, worrying about the things you read online or the struggles that other families are having. Not that you should bury your head in the sand and not look or anticipate, or act on things if you see things come up, but don't dwell on what might happen. And, think about your child today and what they need today and stay in the moment, because this syndrome has paths that families can't predict and doesn't help to be worrying about it. So as a parent, I've always tried to stay in the moment and be reassuring and just try to deal with the problem that we're dealing with now and kind of move forward with it that way.
Great advice. Live in the moment.
Yep.
No, great advice. Well, thank you, Donna. This was wonderful.
You're welcome.
I can't thank you enough. And you can find out more in the description of this podcast on how to contact Donna if you have further questions or like to learn more about what she does. So thank you again, Donna. Thank you for listening. And if you would like to contact me, you can reach me at 22qpodcast@gmail.com with any questions, concerns, or if you're interested in being on this podcast. Until next time, thank you again. Please share and subscribe wherever you like to listen to podcasts. And never forget, 22Q family, that you are not alone.